ReStoRunT is an Excel trick to keep record of changes. So the idea is to use an additional sheet in the workbook which contains formulas that create something which looks like a copy but is not a true copy of the original sheet. And we only modify the ReStoRunT sheet and not the original sheet. And the workbook then keeps the original and the changes. So I just made a small quick example. The small quick example is in the package linked already to. That's the GBIF1 Excel, I think, and there's a GBIF1 ReStoRunT also should be the name. So just imagine you have this sheet. This is just the data you saw, but imported into Excel. Oh no, the name is not anymore as is. And then I run a little bit of code, and then I get a workbook which roughly looks the same, except that there's a little bit of more gray afterwards. It looks the same, right? But if I now go to the original sheet and change a value, this change gets propagated into the other sheet. And there's no VBA. It's just Excel formulas. And the formula you see above here. So what the Python script did was create a sheet which has formulas like these. This is an if. And the value is after the semicolon. So if the cell A1 in the GBIF1 sheet is non-empty or is empty, then the result is empty. And otherwise, it will be the cell A1 in the sheet GBIF1. Why do I need to do this? It's a funny Excel inconsistency. So this thing should give you the value of the cell A1 in the sheet GBIF. But if there's nothing in the cell, the value will be 0. And it won't be empty, it will be 0. So if you have empty cells in that other sheet, it would all be 0. But no, it's not 0, it's empty. So this is what we are catching here. So, and now we created such a formula for each and every cell. Now let's be bold and copy a whole column. I make Control C and copy it over there. And yes, I have all the values. And now let's go to the original sheet and change the value. So I feel a little bit like the magician in the circus. So the fun part is that this change also gets propagated to the original and the copy. So basically the second sheet is sort of a program on how I transform the content of the GBIF1 sheet into that other sheet. So with this idea, if you have fixed sized Excel sheets, for example, which I do have with some partners of mine, for example, do immunoblots. Immunoblots, you have 13 or 12 lanes through which you pull proteins and then measure how far they get. So they have lots of Excel sheets with 12 or 13 values, which then need to be transformed. For this, it's really nice. It doesn't work for things where I don't know how long things can get. Um, for these things, I have to make a especially crafted sheet. So the nice thing about this is it sort of has the functionality of yeah, if you wish, a macro recorder for transformations that move cells or that create new values for cells. You could also create a sum, for example, for the columns of a line or something like that. And at the same time, it doesn't use Visual Basic for applications. And those of you who ever have tried to send an Excel sheet which contains Visual Basic for application know that it's very hard because there's antivirus against it. So it's a security liability. Also, the person who gets the Excel will be asked 2 or 3 times if they really want to execute the macro in your sheet. So if you want to, and has any one of you ever tried to record a meaningful macro in Excel? I think it's really hard to do without knowledge of Visual Basic because you have to either you do things right all the time first time, and that's not me, or you will end up having several pages of Visual Basic for applications which you have to understand and debug. And then in the end, you have undocumented code, right? So with something like ReStoRunT, this cell always tells me where it comes from because I look up and it's cell C1 in the original. So we think, or I think it's pretty useful. But the trouble is so far that it's rather something for curators than for so the person making the sheet must be computer literate. And so currently uptake is slow. I don't have yet the idea on a compelling way of how to support this. What some other people, I know at least some other project where they say we like this idea, but we will rather use it as a documentation. So you could imagine that you're writing, that you are creating a transformation in R, for example. If you create a transformation in R, you always have to make sure that your transformation, the original data, and the resulting sheet is sent around, right? You don't want to separate those three. But you could make a ReStoRunT sheet in R, then you would have all sheets belong together in the same workbook, and you would have a documentation which original cell ended up in which transformed cell. So this is the way we are trying to go. So if you're doing things which are pretty big, which are programmatic, I think there is some fun to be had trying to implement that idea. And if someone of you wants to do it, I would be gladly helping. So that was what I had to say about this.